Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Edgar Church's Basement, a collectible comics podcast from me, Rob Larson. I run a YouTube channel and a blog, both It's All Just Comics, youtube.com/It's All Just Comics and It's All Just Comics.com, where I do some research, some auction reviews, previews, historical collecting, deep dives, and that sort of thing. But it's all very project based. It's all like I have an idea and I'm going to share that idea, and then I work through it from beginning to end. This podcast is meant to serve as a place for me to kind of just talk about this stuff in a more free form manner. And and with that in mind, the first topic and the first kind of 2 or 3 episodes are going to be focused on the most valuable comics in the world. So one of the longest running projects I've done for the blog is an article and associated like ranking of the world's most valuable comic books. And when I say the world's most valuable comic books, I mean the specific individual issues, individual pedigree copies, individual objects that are the most valuable comics. So if you look at online, if you search for some of these other lists, what they'll do is they'll say, well, action number one, just in general, a generic action number one is the most valuable comic book in the world, which is true. But well, spoilers, the Edgar Church action number one, the Mile High Edgar Church pedigree copy of action number one, is the most valuable comic book in the world. So my list aims to actually uncover those individual copies and rank them, and I put values to them, which people think is funny, and but I think is fun. So there we go. And so the purpose of these kind of first like I said, 2 or 3 episodes, it's going to depend on how quickly I can get through this data. Are going to focus on expanding the list. So the list up until now, from I think I started it in maybe 2007, 2008, 2005. I don't know. It was a long time ago, 20 years ago. When I started the list, it was 10, and it's remained 10 up until the latest iteration, which is in 2021. And people have been talking to me about it for years on the CGC forum, and they're like, you should expand it. It's just mostly copies of Action Number One, Detective 27. There's a couple of outliers in there, which is true. And so I thought, that's a great idea. So I'm going to expand it to 25. And as part of that, I need to kind of figure out, before I rank them and write them up, I need to figure out what the top 25 actually is. And so I'm going to do that in real time ish. I'm going to discuss it here at least. I'm going to actually make the decision and put together the official list offline, but I'm going to kind of share my thoughts here and let you see in advance where I'm going to end up with this list. And then, probably the third or fourth episode of the podcast will have an associated video. So I'll do, you'll see my face as opposed to just hearing my voice. And there'll be a video and a new version of the article available all at once. So it'll be a big premiere. It'll be fun. Everyone will be talking. Everyone will be making fun of me. And oohing and ahhing at my my choices, my epic choices. Anyway, enough intro. So let's get started. So so we're gonna basically take a look at the books that I had on the previous list. Like I said, the last example was from 2021, October of 2021. And we're going to go through and just kind of talk about each one of the books that are on the top 10 list. And then there's a kind of an also ran list that follows after that I'll discuss a little bit. So, and we'll see how long this goes. I don't want to be here for an hour, so I might have to split it into 2 or 3 separate episodes, but we'll find out. We'll find out how it goes. As I said, the Edgar Church Mile High copy of Action Number One is the most valuable comic book in the world. It's the easiest book on the list to place, other than maybe the second book. They're really 1A and 1B in the hobby, and they stand far above everything else. I have some new information, some new research, which was staring us in the face for many years, and we had just gotten this wrong. And if you looked at my timeline of the world record comic book sales, which is on the site, and also a series of YouTube videos, you'll see that this book never actually was the record holder, which is fascinating because we just all assumed it had been. But I'll detail that more in the article because it's new research and it puts the growth of this book from where it was in 1984 to now in context, because we'll be able to compare it to another book that's on the list, actually. So, yeah, Mile High, Edgar Church, copy of Action number 1, most important American comic book, best copy of the first appearance of Superman from the greatest comic book collection of all time, a collection so great I named my podcast after it. So there you go. Next up is a book that I've thought about a lot recently because I've been thinking a lot about the Allentown collection. I did a deep dive on YouTube about the Allentown collection. So if you haven't seen that, you should check it out. This is obviously the best book from the Allentown collection. It's the second best book in the hobby, the Allentown copy of Detective Comics number 27. This is a book that I really, really, really want to get more information about. We've had anecdotes about the quality of the Action Comics number 1. Stephen Fischler from Comic Connect / Metropolis says it's a 9.2. Steve Borak, one of my favorite people in the hobby, says that it's a 9.4. They've both seen it. This book, no one has ever given me like an actual grade, right? And so all I have to do is like look at the Allentown books and say, well, is this a 9.6? Is this a 9.4? Is it whatever? So I would love to get more information about this book, but no one's ever been able to provide it for me. So there you go. Anyway, this is, like I said, the 1A and 1B. This is the second most valuable comic book in the world. It's very easy to place. It's the best copy of the first appearance of Batman. So not really much to discuss with these first two, but going forward, yeah, it's going to actually be interesting. So let's take a look at the next one. Next up is Detective Comics number 27, CGC 9.2. Of all of the books that I've ever shared information about on the blog or on my YouTube channel, this is the one that I've gotten the most information about and the least coherent information about. I've heard literally every possible theory I've ever shared being like touted as true, and no one wants to go on the record about it. I understand the owner doesn't want much information about this book out there, and I understand that, and I respect every piece of confidential information that I've been given, especially since none of them jibe. So I've heard like literally every theory that I have about this book being true. So, but suffice it to say, I think it's the most valuable CGC graded comic book, and I believe it's number 3 on the list, and I've had it as number 3 on the list since it appeared out of the blue over 10 years ago. So, and I will have so much more information. Every bit of information that I've been able to verify will be shared in the article. So that'll be fun. Set your calendars, although I don't know when it's going to debut. But I mean, when it debuts, set your calendars. I'll let you know. We'll do a premiere. It'll be fun. There'll be chat. You can make fun of me. It'll be awesome. Next up is the Action Comics number 1, CGC 9.0 White Pages. So this book has, again, a very interesting story. It's sold on eBay of all places. I believe it's the 4th most valuable comic, and as far as I know, the 2nd best copy of Action number 1. When I last released this list in October of 2021, I somehow, and I'm actually not sure why, I somehow had the Nick Cage Action Comics number 1, CGC 9.0, and the previous book, the Action Comics number 1 with white pages, listed as having the same value. At the time, it was $6.5 million. That's in October of 2021. I don't know why. I believe that the white page copy should be worth more money and will sit at number 4 alone ahead of this copy, the Nick Cage copy. Spoilers on what the value will be, I don't know. So there are no spoilers, but they're going to be separated by a little bit, by percentage points, maybe 10% or something like that, because I believe the white pages are significant. Although the story behind this book is worth something. So I don't know. But both were record holders, so you got to give them that. Next up is one of the candidates for being the Detective Comics number 27, CGC 9.2. For many years, we've had this high grade copy. I've referred to it as the quote, other high grade copy of Detective Comics number 27. It's mentioned in Overstreet in the 24th edition of the Overstreet Price Guide. For some reason, in that price guide, it's graded as fine plus like 68. They were using a 100-point grading scale at that point. But every other conversation I've had about it, including with people who were like very active at the time, it was quoted as being like much nicer and was being touted as the second best copy of Detective Comics 27, which is why it's obviously an option to be the Detective Comics 27 CGC 9.2. Now, that said, again, as I mentioned in that listing, I have no idea. So I continue to just keep this book on the list. I'm gonna kind of assume it's a 9.0, and if it's a 9.0 and it's the third best copy, I think it's behind the Action Comics number ones for now. So that's where it stands. So it's at number 6. And I will talk more about this book's history because there is some history on it that we can trace through Overstreet in the full article. Next up is the best existing Superman number 1. So this is a book that I know absolutely nothing about, literally nothing about, other than this book is in the best collection on the planet, which will come up again and again and again in the article and podcast and video. And you'll be sick about hearing this about this collection by the end of it. Or maybe not. Maybe it'll be drooling as I do. Anyway, this is the best Superman number 1. It's better than the Mile High copy, which is just set a record recently for the most valuable comic book in the world. And we only know that it's better than the Mile High copy because it sits in the collection in which it sits. The Mile High copy was available for sale multiple times. It certainly would have been shopped to the current owner of this book, and he chose to keep this book. So we know that it's better than the Mile High copy. It's therefore the number 7 most valuable comic book in the world, or 6 or something like that. I have to deal with the numbers on this, but it's 7th so far, and it continues to be there. I still know nothing about it, which is fine. I mean, speculation is part of the fun here, so we're doing a little speculation. Next up is Detective Comics number 27, CGC 8.5, Edgar Church Mile High copy. With this book, with the previous 2 books, especially starting with the Detective Comics number 27, like the other high grade copy, the position that I'm reading them do not count on that position landing when I do the new top 25 list. Part of like me going through this is giving some thought to the relative values. And for example, I'm halfway on pulling the trigger to moving the best Superman number 1 up a slot to slot in behind the 290 Action number 1s. I'll go into my reasoning if I end up doing that in the eventual article, but really from here on in, I'm just kind of like making sure that I'm including the right books in the top 25. The actual article will give you the final standing. So there you go. But suffice it to say, Detective Comics number 27, Mile High Edgar Church copy, 8.5 CGC graded book, which I wish they would just show us to make the hobby go crazy. It's definitely going to be on the list. Okay, so next up, and the reason that I did this article update in October of 2021 is because a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 9.6 sold for $3.6 million, and set the record. So it was pretty crazy. The issue here is that there are 4 of them. That was kind of a hype era. What are they valued at now, et cetera? That's one of the things I'm going to have to grapple with when I release the top 25 list. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 9.6 into one slot, even though there are 4 of them, basically so I can talk about more books. And I don't know necessarily, I can't see like what every book is, which is white pages, whatever. I can't slice them up and differentiate them. If I could see all of them, I could say like, oh, this one would be the most valuable and whatever, and actually give them different prices. But you know, just to free up some slots and to save myself needless speculation, they're all going to be bundled into one slot on the list and combined. So, but definitely Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 9.6 is going to continue to be on the list and will actually be very interesting to value because a lot was going on at the time, but it's also Spider-Man and Spider-Man rules. So Next up in my original top 10, and a book that is definitely going to go down in the pecking order, is the original Rusty Staple Action Comics #1 CGC 8.5. So back in the day, this was like the first huge book in a CGC holder. It blew our minds, and it also got us talking about the way the hobby deals with rusted staples and restoration and conservation and whatever. And we were all staring at this book that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars at the time and is now worth millions of dollars, clearly, and saying it's got rusty staples. What's going on there? But anyway, so this book is definitely going to go down on the list. It's going to slot behind, somewhere behind, the Action Comics #1 Kansas City copy, which is also now a CGC 8.5, after having taken a return trip down to Sarasota and setting the world record price for a comic book. So this one is definitely on the list. It's going to continue to be there, but it's going to move down a little bit. So spoilers on that one. Although it might end up in the top 10, we don't know how this is all going to work out. You gotta stay tuned to find out. But yeah, so this is in the list. It's going to move down relative to the Kansas City copy of Action Comics #1, and where it lands, we will see. And with that, our little trip through the top 10 as I saw it in October of 2021 is now complete. Spoilers, things are going to change from that top 10, I can tell you right now. And it's going to be really interesting to populate the top 25. The existing list had 13 slots past 10, which were kind of like also rans. But the reality is, uh, there's information about books in that list and about books that aren't on that list that have changed my opinion about the relative value of things. So the 13 books that were originally on my also ran list are the kind of honorable mentions, may not even be in the top 25, but that's going to be the fun part of the next couple of episodes of this podcast, where I look at those books that were in the honorable mentions, evaluate them, and see if they deserve a place in the top 25. And they're definitely not going to be in order. I'm literally going to go from top to bottom in the list as I had it. And those are out of order in terms of value for sure. And I'm going to have to come up with a couple more copies, a couple more books out there. So it's going to take a little bit of research, but it's definitely going to be 2 more episodes before I actually have the full list. And I have to write the article. So we'll see when that lands, but I'll let you know. And yeah, thanks for checking out this first episode. Stay tuned for the second episode, hopefully next week. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.